from the News Channel 5 Network. This is Que Pasa Nashville.
Bienvenidos and welcome to Que Pasa Nashville. My name is Christina Allen and I'm your host. And thank you for joining us each week as we talk about the opportunities and challenges Latinos and our immigrant community bring to Middle Tennessee. Today I have a special guest. I have Renuka Christoph, who is with Christoph Communications, correct?
Correct.
And I have Katie Burns, who's a graduate of the Peabody School at Vanderbilt.
Yes.
Thank you both for being on the show. And this is exciting, this thing you've created, Renuka. Tell us about
Thank you.
Nations in Our Neighbors.
Sure. Okay. So Nations in Our Neighborhood. It's an initiative that I actually thought about it 5 years ago. So my background is marketing, communications, and travel writing, and I have a heart for connecting diverse communities. It's just something that's.
But let me add, you're of Indian descent, is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So you're first generation?
I'm first gen Indian. So I was brought up with my parents talking to me in Hindi and brought up in a very close-knit Indian community. And not only that, but my father was the international director of students at UW Whitewater.
Okay.
So I was brought up, as a child, I was just surrounded by ethnic communities. So I'm very comfortable around international communities and different ethnic groups. It's just embedded within me. So I've always had a heart for connecting diverse people. And one of the greatest ways to do that I have found is through food.
Amen there. Amen.
Yeah.
And so, in the many years I've known you and your company and your professional experience, you've always been in the forefront in connecting people. And as you said, you feel very comfortable, but I think you got to understand that people feel very comfortable with you. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So Katie, kind of tell me what your background is in this. You're a graduate student, but how did you get involved with Nations in Our Neighborhood?
Actually, what I do is I study international education policy and management at Vanderbilt. And so I have my master's, or I'm working towards my master's in that, and part of my experience there has been working with the Turner Family Center for Social Ventures. And so I was lucky enough to get in touch with them and get involved with social enterprise consulting because I have a passion for making social impact, especially within our communities. And so I signed up and I was teamed up with some really great MBA students there, and together we met Renuka, and that's pretty much how our communication started.
So with Nations in Our Neighborhood, you've always, I saw a segment that you did where you went to a Kurdish market. You talk about how much the different foods are, but somehow that you can't get anywhere else but in a Kurdish. And as Nashville has the largest Kurdish population, this Kurdish market is really relevant, from the naan bread to how many Nutellas choices they have. I was just amazed. Well, I'm used to just chocolate, and they have like 7 choices in Nutella. That's also part of your initiative with the food. Tell me how that, first give me a little background on those type of segments you've been doing, and then how the connection came with Vanderbilt.
So I actually worked with the Nashville Convention Visitors Corporation with Butch Spiriton and his team, and we launched Global Beats. So what that was sort of the start into all of this. And so the segment on the Kurdish community was part of Global Beats.
Okay.
And so that was, I worked with them on that, and so now Nations in Our Neighborhood is going to be a deeper dive into the ethnic.
And you've always had Nations in Our Neighborhood to do that.
That's right, that's right. That's something I've always had. And so there's actually some pretty deep underlying messages behind it. So, something that I think we need to address as a community, as a whole, as a country, as a globe, as our biases. So, we all have these biases toward people, triggers or things that we were brought up with. Well, one way, or the negative biases, I should say, and one way to overcome them is to get to know people. The more you get to know somebody and who they are and why they do what they do, the more you understand and you can engage with them. And so on a deeper level, what I'm wanting to do, my core message is to defy prejudice, racism, and bigotry, and to embrace the nations in our neighborhood. So that's what I started out with. And so the question I had asked was, how am I going to do this? How do I bring Nashville together? How do I get people to go out and try different restaurants, from young professionals to older generations that those that are familiar with our ethnic communities to those that have never stepped foot in an Ethiopian restaurant or a Kurdish market.
So as you look at our growing demographics in Middle Tennessee and our large new minority that's come through in the last 10 years or even 20 years with the Latino growth, let's talk a little bit about the Indian Association of Nashville, or the number of Indians are here. There's over 10,000 Indians in Middle Tennessee, educated, assimilated, physicians, professors. Vanderbilt employs a lot of them. So we might not see them in our day-to-day fabric. We might see them in certain areas, but there's a restaurant called Taj Indian Restaurant, and when you go to that restaurant, 50% of the people are non-Indians, but the top of the Indians are there because it's a great restaurant.
That's right.
So it makes someone who's not used to the Indian community to walk in there because it's such an accepted food and culture right there. So, again, breaking bread. And so there's success in some of these restaurants. Why aren't there success with others, you think?
Okay, so I'm gonna tackle that two-part. First, I want to address Taj, which is funny because in the initiative we're launching, which is going to be essentially a global tour of Nashville, where passport holders are going to get to experience every restaurant. Taj is our Indian restaurant that we're going to go with. And so what we want to do is talk about or highlight certain foods that maybe people aren't that familiar with. For example, when you go to an Indian lunch buffet, there's some key items that are always there, but oftentimes we see people eating them wrong. There's actually a certain way you're supposed to eat a couple of dishes, and I'm not going to say what just yet because passport holders yet learn about this. So
you're going to not only talk about the food, but how to eat them properly or how to mix them with the different herbs or stuff, because there's a lot of different dressings, and I just kind of go for the ranch or not the real ones. But
so and there's and it can trace back to the beginning of time. There's actually health benefits, so it's not only pleasing to the palate, but there's health benefits that, if you eat certain foods together, that it's more beneficial to your body. So, we're going to be including that. So it's not going to be just a global tour. It's also going to be a very enriching experience on, health benefits. And another thing I want to add is, so as a travel writer, what I've often done are what are called FAM tours. FAM is short for familiarization tours. And so passport holders are going to get sort of an inside look of being in the role of a travel food writer, but within Nashville. And so we're structuring this sort of like that, this itinerary we're creating. So I'm bringing that experience into it. So it's going to be very intentional. And to answer your question about how there's some restaurants that are perhaps lesser known, maybe it's intimidating, certain cultures or countries to step foot into that restaurant and not knowing, I don't know what to order. I don't know, when I sit down, I don't know what to get.
And I think that's what people are intimidated by. They see the pictures, but they don't know what it is, and it's intimidation. And you're going to break down those intimidations.
And we're going to bridge that. The restaurant owners, the chefs, and so I have relationships with chefs around town and the managers and the different ethnic communities. So we're working together to break down those barriers.
And Katie, what contributions do you see with your international studies on policy education, but just passionate, looks like. I mean, that's why you're doing it. What was so attractive about this?
So personally for me, I've actually spent a lot of time traveling. I worked a couple years as an education consultant in China, and during that time I was traveling to Mongolia, the Philippines, Thailand, Japan, and since I've come back I've done a lot of collaboration in Kenya and Rwanda, and I'm bridging now into Berlin, Germany, and so throughout my experiences, the thing that's always brought us really close together and really understanding a community, which is so important to all the work I've done in every consulting situation, is food. And it makes sense for me because that's what I grew up with, in the kitchen. That's where my family would share things that they were passionate about. They would share insights, we would get advice, and it would always be over us working over food and joining that communal table. And so for me, that's just, it just calls to me as that's something my family was always about, exploring other cultures, bringing it together and trying to make it more accessible in our own home. And I think that that's really what struck me about Renuka's project, that's something that we want to bring to a larger community of people.
And I think that's exciting. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to continue talking about Nations in Our Neighborhood, a new initiative here in Nashville, and with Renuka Christoph. And I think Katie Burns is being contributing as a graduate student, but understanding her passion. So join us right back with Que Pasa Nashville, and we'll give you more details about this initiative.